We move on to the final session of this year's edition of the Hindu Lit for Life. It is another contentious issue. Whose history is it anyway? The session on claiming and reclaiming heritage has three eminent personalities from Chennai. Author and Secretary Music Academy V. Sriram, historian Dr. Chithra Madhavan, and writer, photographer and filmmaker Kombai S. Anvar. I invite them onto the stage.
Good evening, everybody. This is the last session. If it had got on a little later, we would be the first session for the next year. Already they are packing up behind stage. So we'll promise you that we'll stick to time and finish quickly. Chithra and Anvar, two very good friends of mine. The tragedy is that we agree on all points. And so you're not going to have much fireworks over here. But to start this program on whose heritage is it anyway, or whose history is it anyway, history today is nobody's child. And at the same time, it is everybody's child. Anybody with a good internet connection is a historian today. And anybody with a good Twitter handle is a historian. At the same time, most people believe that by just putting a few likes on a lament about some building or something about the past, their job, as far as history is concerned, is over with that. And history today faces a number of challenges. It is a profession, or rather, history is a subject where you don't get to become a historian by choice. Try telling your parents that you'd like to become a historian if you're young, and watch out for the reaction. My father aged like Shah Jahan within 1 minute when I told him I wanted to become He turned grey just in 2.5 minutes flat. And then he sat down and explained to me why. It's like your son telling you that he wants to join the army. If your neighbor joins the army, that's fantastic. You put up a salute, hashtag and all that. But the moment your son says he wants to join the army, no, beta, this is not the right thing for you. You've got a family to take care of. So same way with history as well. So I'd first start by asking my first question to Chithra as to what made her take to history. Then we'll come to Anvar.
First of all, it was, thank you, Sriram. I had a series of very good history teachers in school. And I don't know, it was just a passion for the subject. And I decided in the 8th standard that this is what I would do. And there was no turning back. Despite many protests from family, and despite later a lot of backing from the family as well. And
would you, okay, I'll come back to you on that one. Anvar? What made you take to history?
Thank you, Sriram, and good evening to everyone. For me, the thing is, yes, I had good history teachers, but then the text that we had, when I tried to find myself in the history that was being taught to us, I mean, my heritage, my past and all that, I couldn't find it. And that is what, made me to choose, because I'm doubly disadvantaged. One, I'm a Tamil, I'm a Muslim. And when you take the Indian history, it is basically more North-centric. So, as the Tamilians don't get there too, as well as the Cholas, that's Pandyas, very cursory mention is what comes. So I had to get into history to actually discover my own roots. That was the thing.
I'm surprised that both of you had very good history teachers, because I had the worst history teachers possible. They made it clear to me that they came there because they didn't have any other work to do, and that they had been rejected in most other professions, and that is how they came to teach us history. They clearly hated the subject. They made us hate the subject. The NCERT textbooks were the pits. And it's only on that basis that we all got to like history. Chithra, would you recommend history as a profession to anybody today?
I would not.
Despite having the best teacher?
Despite I had the best teachers, the syllabus is not interesting. And therefore, the way history is taught is not interesting. And despite that, if students want to take history as a profession, I certainly wouldn't support them, because there is no career in it. You could at best become a lecturer, but tell me how many posts are vacant for lecturers. Look at the number of history students in the BA level today. How can they all get to be lecturers? How many of them can, if they pursue archaeology later, how can they all get into the ASI? How many of them can get research grants? So if you follow your passion, you may not end up getting a lucrative career. So my advice to youngsters wanting to study history is go ahead and study it, but as a passion and as a side profession. Take up something lucrative as a career, because we have to be, all of us, sensible. Do something else, study something else. Let history be your serious passion. I know a number of very great historians who have done something else as a career and then become very serious historians or archaeologists as well. So that would be my advice to youngsters.
Anvar, would you agree with that, or would you have a dissenting view?
No, yeah, probably, what Chithra says, I do agree. I mean, today there is not much of a scope. But looking at West, I would say, today history has become the flavor. I believe in Europe and all that, UK, there is more interest towards history. But more than that, irrespective of all this, we need to take history. Because our past, without knowing our past, today a lot of problems that we face today are because of history. And without a good understanding, it will create a lot of problems. For example, I was saying, why I got into my own research. The thing is, you'll be surprised to know that today the Tamils and Sinhalese are tear at each other in Sri Lanka. But till 14th century, the relationship between the Pandyas and the Sinhalese, the Kandi kingdom, was such that there was matrimonial alliances. And so much so that at one point of time, when the Kandi kingdom lost its male lineage, hair, they actually sought a male from Madurai. At the time, Pandyas were not rulers, but their association with Madurai was such that they would rather have the king come from Madurai. That's the kind of relationship we had. But all that, got screwed up with the introduction of Western concept of nationalism. Not only that, look at it, it started from Vijayabahu and went on till such a long time. Similarly, many other things, problems that we face today, as of today, the issues, all that the origins are in history, and without knowing it, you're not going to find solutions. So it's very important, whether there is a career or not, it is important for us to get into history.
So you're saying if you're a male heir from Madurai, you have a good future?
I do.
I get the point. Okay. So moving on to this point on history and who is really the owner of history in terms of, there are two problems that I look at it in terms of current history at least, in the sense that one is, on one level, there is really no owner for history. So a building that is 400 years old can be demolished, and an Anna Nagar arch that is 40 years old can be certified as heritage and pushed back, reconstructed even though it was demolished, and then placed exactly where it was, and everybody celebrates it. So this is one element of history that is very intriguing as far as I'm concerned, that the very people who celebrate the pushing back of an arch come back and tell us, why should that old building be standing in the way? It's an enemy to development, it's not for progress. So that is one aspect of it. The other aspect, which I will put as stage 2 of my question, is the freedom with which today we rewrite history. The attempt which is being continuously made to rewrite history on a regular basis. So can I start with the first point about, the way in which we brush aside certain elements of our history and then we try to take on certain other aspects of history. What would you like to say on that?
That's actually because of lack of heritage awareness. If children are taught in schools, right from, say, the 3rd standard or so, that they have to value what they have, they should be taken to these places and explained. History cannot be boring if the child is taught about local history. It just cannot. They have to be taken to the site and told about the importance of that particular monument and the history behind it, and then they'll fall in love with the subject, and they'll never, ever allow a historic monument to be demolished. That's a given, and that's the way we want to see it.
But do you think that there is even an attempt in that direction today?
Unfortunately not in India.
How would you like to react to the same thing?
The problem I see in India is there is plenty. Plenty
too much of
monuments.
it sometimes.
Too much of monuments. Like, you go to Penang, which came much later, and they call a Georgetown. Georgetown, they have a great festival. We have a bigger Georgetown here. And there are people living, they're continuously evolving. And every village here, has a 800-year-old temple or 1,000-year-old temple. And as I see today where we are standing, India, in a Maslow's development, today the people's needs are different. Food is still an important thing. So the concern for heritage, takes a back seat. There has to be an awareness. Schools have to be, children have to be taught about all that. But I think it's a process that everyone goes through. I think Singapore at one point of time happily went about demolishing all the structures, but now they realize it. I think there is a point of time when the society becomes, wealthy enough or reasonably this thing, then they start taking a relook at it. But till then, I think people like us, everyone has to work on educating the children, educating the general public about the importance of these monuments.
But the question always comes back is, what is the economic benefit that I get by maintaining my history? See, today we are a poor nation, and we may claim that we are a rich nation, we are no longer third world and all that, but there is no denying that there is a huge percentage of our population that is deprived. That is on one side. The other side is the skyrocketing real estate. Right now it's not skyrocketing anymore, it's flattening out. Whenever I try to sell anything, I notice that the real estate flattens out. But that's my fortune. But the point here is that now the property values are so high, and if there is a historic monument in your midst, that is viewed as a nuisance. Take for instance this ongoing agitation in Pallavaram for the past, I do not know how many decades now, I think it's 2 decades since this agitation began, where these people have suddenly come to realize that they've got this Paleolithic site right in their midst. And the government has taken a very, it's the way governments work, right? They either have a 0 or a 1. They are the original binaries. So the government has decided that you cannot do anything with your property in that locality. So people have come to hate that Paleolithic settlement, and they are trying their level best on one side to plead with the government to make changes. On the other side, I don't think it will be very long before there is one charge of the Light Brigade and they go and destroy everything and say, there, that's it, Paleolithic all done with. Now let's get on with the development of the property. What do you think is the better way out here?
This has happened to many other archaeological sites in the past, especially in the vicinity of Chennai, where land development is happening. Again, I think the protectors of these sites have to take a very firm stance. We cannot have this happen. This is our past, and this is something that we should value. So if enforcement is necessary, then definitely that has to happen. If we let it go, it will continue to all other heritage sites as well. Buildings are being demolished, and all these Stone Age sites are also vanishing by the day. If we let that go, we are saying now we have a problem of plenty. Finally, we'll have nothing at all left with us.
Before I ask Anvar a counter to this one, I was just thinking about something that I wrote of a building, and then I got a call a week later from somebody who said he was the owner. He thanked me profusely for writing about the building, and then I asked him, சரி இப்போ என்ன பண்ண போறீங்க? இல்லை நாங்கள் உங்கள் ஆர்டிக்கிள் வந்த மறுநாளே அந்த பில்டிங்கை இடிச்சிட்டோம். நீங்கள் சொல்கிற வரைக்கும் எங்களுக்கு தெரியாது அது அவ்வளோ இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் அப்படின்னு நீங்கள் சொல்லி கவர்மெண்ட் ரியாக்ட் பண்ணுறதுக்கு பின்னாடி we demolished that particular structure. So that was the way it is treated. Now, is there any way that we can get the people who are stakeholders in it to feel that they need to preserve it? Do they have any chance of getting a benefit out of that?
No, I think our developmental model, the Pallavaram thing that you said, I think we need to rethink our entire developmental model. Now the thing they announced Greater Chennai, included more areas. The thing is, whole lot of the entire Tamil Nadu, almost everyone is converging on Chennai. That kind of a pressure is what is leading to, Pallavaram, people sticking to that. So this developmental model, which involves, heritage also in it, that sort of a rethinking has to happen. And educating, this policy holders, all these people need to be made aware of. That's the only thing I say.
Today there is a tendency, Anvar, of rewriting our history. See, Aurangzeb has suddenly become evil, and so, he was always, he was evil. I don't want anybody trolling me now saying you said Aurangzeb was good. But what I meant was that, like all of us, he had good and bad to his character. Let me put it that way. But suddenly he becomes extra evil, then Akbar becomes evil. Akbar, whom I thought was, a very good man all along, and suddenly he becomes evil. So, you have all these roads being renamed and gradually all these things getting eliminated. Then we've got stories of Padmavati and stuff like that. So suddenly everybody, when we were in 12th standard, we read Padmavati in Calcutta, Malik Muhammad Jaisi's poem. And we always thought it was a work of fiction. We never realized that it had such historic connotations to it. In fact, our Hindi teacher told us there are certain sections of it that you shouldn't read, so we only read those portions to find out what exactly was in it. But it was very, very interesting, I must say. At that age, you learnt a lot about life by reading Padmavat. But the point here is that, would you really agree with the fact that today's history needs to relook at the contribution of people like the Mughals and all that, particularly coming from your community background? What would you really say can be done, or do you think it is at all justified?
Yes, it definitely needs a complete relook because, say, I can't go by North India, I'm just going by South. And there is these 3 interesting episodes of Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb never came to Tamil Nadu, but then his shadow loomed large, especially with the siege of Senji. Okay, Senji was place where I think Rajaram or the Maratha, they had taken refuge. And the Mughal forces were sent for mopping up operations, and probably the Mughals were expanding. And what happens here is very interesting. Zulfikar Khan is a general who comes here. And a siege that should have gotten over in a matter of months drags for years. And who complains it to Aurangzeb first? It's Yachama Nayak, a Telugu chieftain. He writes to Aurangzeb saying that your man here is fooling you. Because at that point of time, there are a number of reasons being attributed for the delay in the siege, saying that Zulfikar Khan expected Aurangzeb, who was aged, to die anytime. And he wanted to probably, keep this Zagir. Or that if he finishes this, he might be sent to some other assignment, which he didn't want to, probably Northwest Frontier or something. The third
it's like transferring our IAS officers to the museum department.
Yes. And the third one, which seems to be the most possible one, was Zulfikar Khan was in the pay of the Marathas. And that's why it was dragging. Now, Yachama Nayak writes a letter saying your man is fooling you. Now, going by the yardstick, Yachama Nayak is a Hindu chieftain. Why should he be writing to Aurangzeb, who is a Muslim bigot? But he writes saying that, no, your man is fooling you. Give me charge, I will take over the fort within a week. Unfortunately, the letter gets caught with Zulfikar Khan. And he doesn't reveal it. He calls Yachama Nayak for a meeting and makes an accident and kills him. Like an accident, he kills him. But finally, meanwhile, Aurangzeb sends his son Kambaksh, Prince Kambaksh, to look at what is happening. Kambaksh comes, he also expects his father to croak anytime, and he is planning the succession immediately. So he tries to make a deal with the Marathas. And when Zulfikar comes to know about it, Zulfikar Khan arrests Kambaksh. The Mughal prince is arrested by the general. Okay. Now, Aurangzeb sends another confidant of him. That's the most interesting point. And this guy comes, he is a Rajput Hindu.
Sarup Singh.
No, Rajput Hindu who is sent with money. The Mughals are also strapped, the forces are strapped for cash. He comes and he's a close confidant of Aurangzeb. Now, when he comes here, obviously Zulfikar Khan wanted to make a show. So they go around the Senji fort. Suddenly they are surrounded by the Maratha forces. Okay? Now, all that the Marathas are saying is that, please, we are not here to fight. These are the terms. Under these terms, we would like to sign a treaty. Now, Zulfikar Khan looks at the Rajput Hindu and tells him, we are surrounded, helpless, so I think we have to sign. Now, there that Rajput Hindu turns and says, no way. Who are these Marathas to tell terms to us Mughals? He used the words Mughals. To us Mughals, who are these Marathas, to tell terms, dictate terms? No way. I will not agree, the Badshah will not agree. Now, after that, Zulfikar Khan could do nothing other than to fight. Now, the thing is, it's a Rajput Hindu who actually stands for Aurangzeb. Now, with these sort of things, I think we need a complete relook at the entire history.
I think our history has a number of episodes of this nature.
And the thing is, what we have inherited is a colonial history.
Absolutely.
The colonizers have written, and their limited understanding of India.
Oh, we saw it a little while ago. I'm quite aware of what you're saying.
Yeah. And the Hindu saga, Muslim saga, which was not the way here it was.
And I think the man in Delhi doesn't know of HMR Nayak. Imagine HMR Nayak Road, how it would be. Anyway, let's get on with. So, Chithra, the question here is about, we've had a number of instances where they say that, the Mughal rulers demolished a number of things. But isn't it a general trend of history that the victor wipes out the history of the vanquished? You take a foundation stone on Marina Beach saying Chief Minister so-and-so has laid this beautification exercise. Successive government comes, embarks on the same beautification exercise, removes the old foundation stone and puts a new one and says, this foundation stone laid by present Chief Minister for beautification of the Marina Beach. And then next election, old Chief Minister comes right back, beautifies the Marina Beach, puts one more foundation stone. So you have 3 foundation stones, one after the other, enriching the museum at the end of the day. So what would you like to say? Don't you think it's been a continuous trend in history?
In a way, yes, and in a way, no. Because if you go into the inscriptions and into the literature of the time and other authentic sources, and I'm talking about South India now, we'll find that when the last emperor of a certain dynasty was killed and the enemies came in, let's say, for example, when the last Chola king was killed and the Pandyas stormed into Gangaikonda Cholapuram, definitely the palace would have been razed to the ground, the treasures captured, maybe the queens as well, perhaps. But then what the enemy didn't do was to attack the temple. So the temple was a place of worship, whether it was for the victor or for the vanquished, so that was not touched at all. I'll give you an example. If you look at the Tanjavur temple, the Pandyas added to it, and they were the victors. There are many, many, many such examples as far as South Indian history are concerned, by way of authentic epigraphical evidence, inscriptions, of the victor left in the temple of the vanquished. So I guess all the other structures may have gone, many other atrocities committed also. I know of the atrocities by way of inscriptions of Rajaraja the Great and of Rajendra also when he fought against the dynasty of the Chalukyas of Kalyana.
And Kerala as well.
Much in Kerala as well. So all these things are there in black and white for us to read and to learn. But then, as I said, the religious structure wasn't affected at all.
That would have been the only one that was saved. So you don't think that we have much scope for many of the heritage buildings in Chennai? They are on their way out.
I'm an optimist. We are all optimists here on stage. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We just hope for the best.
Okay. Coming back to this concept of how do we make success out of history, in the sense that I don't see it happening in the near future. Where do you think we need to begin in order to get people to really understand that history is important, history needs to be saved, history needs a future, which it doesn't have at this point of time, at least in India. How do we go about it?
No, I mean, today the thing is we are at a juncture of our journey, the nation, that unless otherwise, we deal with that history. Like, for example, I mean, you asked her a question and then about the kings that I think, and you have been very kind enough not to ask, why did the Muslim kings destroy temples?
Well, you can take that forward,
yeah?
If you so feel like. Brave man, Anvar.
Yeah. So, I mean, let me take it. I mean, before you say that, now the thing is, if you go down this East Coast Road, near Cheyyar, you find there is an inscription which talks about Muslim Rautars, Tamil Muslim Rautars actually donating land for a Murugan temple. I think it's a 17th century inscription. Now, that's a Tamil Muslim thing, so I can conveniently run away saying that I'm a Tamil Muslim, I have nothing to do with this destruction. But being that, let me answer, because that's one of the points that again and again used by the right wing to polarize. So I need to deal with this. Now, if you take it, the first invasion from north that happens is Malik Kafur's invasion. Now, if you are a tourist, going anywhere in South India, and if there is any statue that is broken in a temple, the guides will happily say, Malik Kafur did it. Okay. Now, the thing is, Malik
Subhash Kapoor has been doing it after Malik Kafur. Anyway, carry on.
So, the thing is, it's strange. Malik Kafur would have left the main deity, but, broken some deity in some corner. Now, Malik Kafur should also be a superhuman being to be breaking statues across all over South India. And the most interesting thing is he was in Tamil Nadu for about 40 days. Okay. Now, the thing is, what happens when Malikapur comes, after he does everything, he comes along with Veeravalala's troops. Okay. And Madurai itself, which is where I come from, Madurai district, there itself, you find that in the temple, I remember reading, written in saying that Malikapur visited the temple along with Senavaraya. And during the visit, he saw the Kalyanai Mandapam, the 8 elephants guarding the Sundareshwar shrine. So he asked, what is it? And you know how our people are. These are the elephants which are guarding the deity. You mean to say granite elephants? No, these are live elephants. So Malikapur is supposed to have live elephants. Let me check. He's supposed to ask for a sugar cane and given it. And the elephants ate, I believe. So this is the mythology that is written in the Meenakshi. Yeah. So the thing, but for me, what is interesting is that he didn't order the demolition. He came, he checked and went back. But the myth is that he destroyed. Now the interesting thing is, the entire history of Malikapur's invasion is written after he goes to Delhi. And it is written by another man, Amir Khusro. And that is where, all this, the flame of Islam, all that comes into being. Now, historians here, a lot of them, say that he destroyed the Srirangam temple, he destroyed the Chidambaram, Tanjavur, all temples. Now, Srirangam is one of the temples, which they speak about, having. And they also write, the infidels had such wealth that we believe that it was below the Sanctum Sanctorum. So, we even dug the Sanctum Sanctorum and took away the wealth. Now, Leslie Orr, a Canadian scholar, she says that in Srirangam, probably Chithra can attest to it, in the Sanctum Sanctorum, there is an 8th century inscription. Now, if they had really dug up the Sanctum Sanctorum, how is an 8th century inscription intact? So, there is something, when you go back, you brag and you write and you say that...
So, you mean he went back to Delhi and wrote a number of things?
Yes.
So, when you go to Delhi, you have to generally be careful.
Absolutely true. So, these are the things, we need to look at. And our own history, if you look at it, yes, it's very fashionable to point a finger at the Muslims saying that you did that. Now, let me look at it, look at our own Madras. There is a story of the Kapaleshwar temple tank. I'm not going to say the same thing as, what Walaja did. But the story behind it is very interesting. And it was also reported in the Hindu. That the minister in Walaja's cabinet, he wanted the temple tank enlarged. An Hindu minister. Now, the thing is, there were fakirs who were living right at the temple tank, and they were not willing to give up their land. So what Walaja did was, he is supposed to have issued a decree saying that all the fakirs, had to attend a festival of a Sufi, Buddha Sahib, who was martyred during the Portuguese fight with the Portuguese, which is at Pallavram, So they have to attend it compulsorily, issued a decree and ensured that these fakirs left this temple tank. And once they left the temple tank, they started, the place which was occupied by the fakir, they started enlarging the temple tank. Now, this is one story. Let me go to another temple tank, which is at Tiruvarur. Tiruvarur has one of the biggest temple tanks, in which I believe Karunanidhi in his young age tried swimming and halfway through actually gave up because it was too big. Now, that temple tank, Periya Puranam, talks about the temple tank in which actually the Jains actually had their mutts. It was a small temple tank. And Thandiyadigal, they went with Prabhas and other things and decided to demolish the Jain mutt. The Jains were Tamil Jains. When I'm talking about Jains, please understand that I'm talking about Tamil Jains.
It is not Agarchan, Manmal, Sokar and all that.
No, not them. Okay? So, these Jains were completely taken by surprise. But they couldn't, because there was already a mob there, so they just ran away for their life. And Periya Puranam actually gloats about it. This is how we enlarge the temple tank. So I think, the selective reading of history, the way we are doing, I think that needs to be, and the blame being put on the Muslims that, you demolished, you did. So how did Jainism and Buddhism disappear in Tamil Nadu? I think we need to answer that. Across India also, how did Buddhism disappear? I think we need to answer those things.
Before we start World War III inside this hall, Chithra, I'm not going to ask you about Malikapur and the Srirangam temple. Let me leave that out of I think that is documented to a large extent, so I'm not going to go into that. But my question is that today we appear to also have a problem of selectively reading history. For me, history is what I like. The points that I like about history are history. The rest of it is all fiction. No matter if there is a stone inscription staring at me in the face, I will not believe it if it is a fact that I do not like. And today it is also gone to an extent where if it is about my religion, it is fact. If it is about your religion, it is fiction. So it's, I think, gone to that extent today. What do you have to say about it? Because Anvar, I think, has shown us instances of a lot of amity. So, of course, as well as discord. But would you like to add anything on that?
Yeah, it's a very, very unfortunate that this is one subject that's being pulled this way and that. And it shouldn't, really, because there is something called objectivity, and that every historian has to follow. So if you have, and again, I'm harping on inscriptions because these are the most authentic sources of history we have. There's only one language the inscription speaks. I mean, literally and figuratively. So we just take the evidence from there and place it before the audience in a language that they understand. So I don't see how it can be read selectively. I understand how it's done, but that it really, really shouldn't. Because if that is done, then historians coming at a later date can easily find out that that is a false statement. And I don't think it's the right way to view history at all. I'm a professional historian. I read inscriptions and literary sources. That's all there is there. I don't see a problem in presenting it the way it is.
My other question to you is about language awareness. Today, we have a number of people claiming to be experts in history who do not know the local language at all. So they read everything. All their reading is from Westerners' accounts of our culture. Very often you even have instances where there is a Tamil passage which has been translated and put into an English book. And when the Tamil translation of that English book comes out, they translate the English back into Tamil without going into the original Tamil. So, and we have a number of cases where I don't know any Tamil. So this kind of, how can we be custodians of our culture if we are divorced from our own language?
Absolutely right. You said it,
So
Sriram.
how do you think
We need to know the local language. We also need to know what was the pan-Indian language, Sanskritam. So first of all, we say Sanskrit and we say Tamil. We needn't. It's Tamil and it's Sanskritam. These are two words, and I don't know why we can't wrap our tongues around these two words. And
television anchors don't say it. They say Moli all the time.
Which is true. So my take on this is, if you are looking at local history, whichever, Bengali history, Tamil history, Malayalam history, you must know the local language. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to read the primary sources, whether it's the Devaram or the Divya Prabandham or whatever it is. And then there is this language called Sanskritam, where all over India you find walls and pillars peppered with inscriptions in this language. So any self-respecting, any objective historian must know the local language and what was the pan-Indian language. It is necessary to go to the root to find out the history of that land. What is the use of reading translations by somebody else? We don't know whether that person has translated it well or not. It defeats the purpose completely and totally. So it's absolutely necessary to know the local language so that you can get the local flavor. Mandatory.
May I add to that?
I was going to ask you the same thing. In Islamic history or even in research, how many of them really know how to read Urdu or the Quran and the texts which are written in Persian or Arabic? How many people really know that today? Okay. I'm not talking about Tamil history here. I'm asking about generally about Islamic history.
Okay, no. Two things. One is Islamic history it's a very cosmopolitan world and many ethnicities. So, I mean, there is a Tamil Islamic history, there is a Urdu Muslim. There are issues. In the sense, today I find that, in Tamil Nadu, I find that the Urdu Muslims, want to retain their language. Good enough. I'm not saying that. But we did see this school, which actually came down. How many of them are actually enrolling?
You mean Madrasa-e-Azam?
Madrasa-e-Azam.
Would you like to, I think you should talk a little bit about it so that people get to really know.
No, it's one of those, old, first of the madrasas, which was converted by Edward Balfour into an English education school with the help of the Nawab. Till then it was the Nawab's madrasa. And it was made into a proper school, teaching all secular subjects and all that. Now, that sort of a school is there, but today, there are many schools here in Madras, which teach Urdu, but the thing is the Urdu Muslim community has not really taken to it. But, any, be it, any thing they'll bring in minority issues and they say that, we need our language, appreciable. But there are so many Urdu Muslim poets from Madras. I would say that many of the colleges run by the Urdu Muslims, the head of the departments do not know about any of the Madras Urdu poets. That's a sad state. And yet they want to, say Urdu. And the thing is, a lot of history, documentation is in Urdu. And a few days back, somebody came and approached me, wanted to do a film on one of the things. And the thing is, I asked him, so, do you know Urdu? Yes, he said. So, can you write and read? No, I can't read and write. So, what is the only language? He grows up in Madras. He knows to speak Urdu, but he can read and write only English.
He can't read and write Tamil.
He can't even read Tamil because they refuse. That's a sad state of it. But coming to the scholars that you said, now the Western scholars, even our own scholars, non-Tamil scholars, who write about it, create a lot of problems. Just like the problem that we found sometime back, another scholar talking rubbish about our land.
You're more diplomatic than I am, I say. Not bad.
No, it's because they create the problems, where it is not necessary. I'll tell you this instance of Sira Puranam, which is one of the great epics on Prophet Muhammad. It's his story, his history. And that is written by Umar Pulavar in 18th century. Now, in that, you find the landscape is basically the Tamil landscape.
That's what he would have known.
Yeah. So, the Arab women are putting kolam. Okay. And, a whole lot of things, which have Tamil identity. They're following the Tamil genre of writing. And there is this great scholar who has done work on the Tamil Muslims who says that this was written to appease the majority Hindus. Now, I'm saying in 18th century, what was the need for somebody to appease the majority Hindus? What nonsense you are talking about? The thing is, if you come to today, if you go into many of the mosques in Tamil Nadu, the thousands of mosques in Tamil Nadu which are built in Dravidian Islamic architectural style, you don't simply say that these mosques were built to, appease the Hindus. Otherwise, you can also say all these were temples that have been converted into mosques. This sort of confusion and lack of understanding, the Western scholars, some of them have done great work, like Susan Bailey. There are a few scholars, David Shulman, they have done great work. But there are also people who don't learn the language, and as you said, this is they read the translation, and from that they arrive at. So that creates issues.
Chithra, going back to today, I think the other big problem as far as our temple history is concerned is that for a long time we had no money. And today we have too much of money. And so we have Rajagopurams coming out like an eczema everywhere. And what would you like to say about the way in which we are going about dealing with our temples and our deities?
Again, an excellent question, Sriram. I'm happy you brought this up.
You didn't think any of the other questions were excellent?
They're all excellent, Sriram. Every other question is excellent, particularly this, because this is something so close to my heart. You see, no temple that we see in the south, especially in Tamil Nadu today, has been the product of any one king or any one dynasty. If you look at the famous Rajarajeshwaram, the Brihadishwara temple, other than the core, many other structures were added at later periods of time, even till about 100 years ago. I'm not saying it's wrong to add another structure to an already existing temple, even if it's a Chola or a Pandya or a Pallava structure, and if it is in worship, and people want to add something to it, maybe a sanctum or a gopuram or another compound wall, so be it. But not at the cost of tarnishing something that is already there, like say an inscription or an ancient sculpture. Once that goes, we've lost that history altogether. Now we are looking at some of the temples in Mylapore which had Chola inscriptions on them. At least 12 inscriptions, I'm not giving you the names of those temples, but important
you have
Chola
taken us
inscriptions.
there, so we know
you
which
know.
ones.
So there are inscriptions there, there were inscriptions there, but they've been painted on or glazed tile stuck on the walls. So we are not looking at these inscriptions as basically religious in nature, though they may be donative. They are giving money or some livestock or something to the temple. But then the amount of information a historian can get out of any one information is worth its weight in gold. So if you're going to tarnish it, that's it. That's the end of that source of history, which is so very sad. So go ahead, add structures to ancient temples, but do it in a very sensitive manner. Don't tarnish what is already there. It's so important. Again, the problem is the common man doesn't understand the importance of the history that is there inside an ancient monument. And the people in charge, most unfortunately, don't understand it either, because it's not been fed to them when they were in school or in college. So they just go about renovation in any which way, especially sandblasting, which is against the law, but it is still happening. And
yes, I can tell you, our village in Tirunelveli, Kumbhabhishekam done after some 25 years or something like that, and full of inscriptions. And then I donated money, among many others. And then the Kumbhabhishekam was done. When I went back, I found no inscriptions. So I said, what happened? Ellathiyum sandblast panni eduthutom. Ipo clean ah irukku parunga severalla. So that was the end of the story.
This is happening to paintings, to sculptures, to inscriptions, to everything ancient, everything worthy of being maintained. And this is happening everywhere, all the time, in front of our eyes.
What do you also have to say about putting up tube light holders which say Chinna Kadai Dharmambal Dharmam, and then the Ubayam? Then the tube light goes away after some time, but the holder is there permanently for you to read.
Absolutely. And the person who built the temple hasn't left his name behind. The sculptors haven't. The people who've written the inscriptions haven't left their names, but this new Ubayam is there. It's sad.
And then you also have people who write SK loves to Satya and put a heart with an arrow right behind the sanctum, hoping that their prayer will be answered. So you have
just tell them that their prayers will not be answered if they do that. That's the solution.
Do you have that kind of vandalism going on in mosques as well? Modernization. I know churches are full of it. Every pastor wants to build a steeple on top of his church.
No, it does happen. And the thing is, I think there is a lot of commerce, economic this thing behind it. Because I tried showing an architect, saying, these are beautiful mosques. A Muslim architect, and he has been building a lot of new mosques, and he said, no, first thing, destroy it, because the RSS will come and claim that, these are temples. I told him, listen, there is evidence, enough inscription evidence to say that these were built at this time, but the thing is also, like all the bathroom tiles coming, that also happens. But one positive thing I've noticed here is now the community, long back, like place like Keelakarai, you find some of the most beautiful, fabulous Dravidian Islamic architecture in Tamil Nadu. And they've started actually renovating the mosques, with all those elements, beautifully. Two very old mosques have been renovated. And I think now a lot of them value that history. They are going back. I think many other places, Kayalpatnam, other, very early Muslim settlements, all those places, the early mosques are being renovated. So that I see as a kind of a positive thing happening in the Muslim community.
So, but these Dubai models are not coming up like the way we have
it does come. The new mosques are basically Dubai. So, Dubai or whatever, because the funding comes
from... The 10-minute child is here. The angel with the 10-minute placard. Now, I think we must... is that 10 minutes till the end, inclusive of questions? Okay. So, I think we'll have a quick wrap and then we'll throw it open for questions. So, where do we go from here?
Again and again, I'm
home, I'm sure, but then...
The only way is to sensitize the general public. And we have to go at it hammer and tongs.
And will we succeed in 1,000 years?
I believe we will succeed very soon if we go about it the right way. Go to the schools, get them young, make them understand. Go to the locals, tell them that these structures, whatever structure it may be, is historic, you need to preserve it. I am positive, very positive, I'm an optimist, I'm sure it will happen, but we have to start now.
I do agree. I think, we can't expect the government or others to do it. I think it has to be a people's effort. And Tamil Nadu, I think, is going through a great transformation. If you look at the Jallikattu and all, that was not just about Jallikattu, it was about our cultural heritage, rediscovering. I see a whole lot of, people turning towards natural farming, a whole lot of things, a movement is actually happening in Tamil Nadu, and this is the right time. Along with that, heritage clubs should be opened in schools, colleges, and I think we should make an effort, and it will turn. I think things will turn.
More importantly, I think we need to get people to understand that long-term economic benefit will happen only if the heritage is preserved. That is, you sell the property, you encash, and then you put it in the bank, and that comes down every year. By the time you pass it to your children, it's diminished in value, the cash component. But if you preserve that heritage and pass it on, it only increases in value for the succeeding generation. You're not going to be there to see them benefit, but in the long term they will. I think that is a very clear message that needs to be passed on to people. All right, folks, we are open to questions. Questions and no comments. We've got the lady. We'll start with the lady, Vidya. Vidya, will you please ask your question?
Good evening, Sriram. What was your motivation to start the Heritage Walks in Chennai, and what do you think you will achieve, and what have you achieved?
The answer is very clear. Nobody was listening to me at home. So I decided I'll go out into the street and tell the story so people will follow. No, it's not that. There was a burning passion. It still is. The happiest moments in my life are when I'm leading a heritage walk. And I love the concept of telling that story. I weep when I think of the sad things that have happened in a building. I become one with those characters that I talk about. You have to have a sense of drama, you have to have a sense of history, you have to enjoy the fact that people are watching you from windows and buses and ogling at you and finding out what you're doing. So you have to enjoy all that. You have to be a little publicity conscious as well. So, but the point is that I love telling that story. That is the motivation. And I am sure it has made a difference to some people, at least who follow me on those tours.
My question is for basically open to all three panelists. It's an observation of mine, and I'd like your comments. Now in Tamil Nadu, it's an observation I've seen that people don't seem to ask questions directly. They always seem to, beat around the bush a lot and drag, questions because they don't want to be possibly they don't want to be rude or whatever, but they don't really talk directly, and a lot of beating around the bush happens, especially in this day and age with all the technology and all with so much education.
Quick!
I'm saying
I need to go home.
Yeah, that's fine. And a lot of people here seem to be born with a PhD on how to be silent spectators. So the credibility of historians of the past is even more questionable. So your comments.
Chithra Madhavan.
I didn't understand that at all.
Chithra Madhavan.
I'm really sorry.
I'm saying people don't confirm facts easily. Something that can be confirmed within a day, even in 5 years, they won't be able to confirm those facts. In this day and age, facts which can be confirmed within a day, even in 5 years.
Well, that's true of any profession, I'm sure.
So I'm saying credibility of historians from here.
Unless we have our facts clear, we will not be able to confirm anything.
No,
that's about it. And if we have the facts, we don't have any objection in telling people about those facts.
No professional historian will dilly-dally.
Yeah.
Chithra Madam.
Chithra, there's somebody saying Chithra Madam forever. Yeah, who is he? There.
Hello. Chithra Madam.
Yes.
I want to disagree with you and Sriram.
All right, thank you.
Wait. I'll tell what. I have worked with 5 German Indologists. They had million times brain than any Indian scholar.
Thank you.
And
Accept it.
First dictionaries in all South India and North India, all written by Europeans.
Very good.
Not Tamilians, not Indians.
Excellent.
So don't disregard them saying they have to know the language to do research.
Hail
They are
Hitler.
the only one, they have done the best research in India.
How do you
Thank
know
you.
they didn't know the language?
No, you are saying they should know the language.
Of course. How
They
do you
should
know
know
they
the
didn't know the
language.
language?
With interpreters.
All right, we accept your point. Next question.
So my question is to you.
Hello. Sir, I've been going to monuments for over 20 years now.
Excuse me, sir.
And some of them says archaeological survey of India, ASI protected and all those stuff. But I still find Mihir loves Deepthi and all those things there. Now, as citizens, what do we do? How do we change this? Because I find this very, very distasteful, and I don't know what is because the government is not able to do anything on this.
No, first you photograph it and you send it to the archaeological survey and make it public. The fact that these places are being vandalized like this, you don't sit silent on it. Please don't. What I'm saying is that you need to become an activist yourself. That's the only way you'll be able to protect it. See, the Archaeological Survey of India doesn't have too many people. It's a highly short-staffed organization. And while I have the greatest respect for it and all that, there are many of them who are not really interested in what's going on. So unless we really make this neglect public, I don't think much action will happen. But if you do make it public, there is instant action. I can tell you that much. It's sheer negligence that prevents these things.
Absolutely, I agree with you. But what has happened is these have happened some 20 odd years back, and no change has happened since then. So I don't know, there must have been people who have posted these pictures which have happened in this particular place, but nothing has
Today
changed.
you can make that change.
Okay.
All of us are doing
and,
it.
And one more question, please.
No, one question, because we've got another gentleman waiting. Yes, Mr. Kannan Chakravarti.
Sorry. If you value the inscriptions in temples so much, what's the test for the genuinity of those inscriptions?
It's very clear to an epigraphist when he even sees an inscription.
Anybody can put something and then say it's an inscription.
You can't do that.
Which might have happened many years later.
There's something called paleography, which is the study of scripts. So the language and the script have changed from time to time. You cannot replicate a Chola inscription without an epigraphist recognizing it as such immediately.
Your views on the Andal controversy?
On the
Andal controversy which is taking place?
I don't think I would like to comment on it at all.
So my question is to you, Mr. Anwar. So
the reason I shade my eyes is I can hear only if I see properly.
Okay, so
Where
my
are
question is about the interpretation of Islamic literature and history. So we see in recent days there's a lot of wrongful interpretation of Islamic history, literature. So do you feel that the problem is with the theory itself, or is it only something that's practical? Is it only in practice that it's in fault?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah. So we see that with Islamic literature and history, there's a lot of wrongful interpretations of Islamic literature and history in recent days with the presence of organizations. So do you feel that the fault in itself is only in practice, or is there a certain problem with the theory itself?
No, I mean, this is going to take a long time, but I'll just try to be short. See, there have been various interpretations. Today, we are also, probably I see the biggest curse, the reason for problems is oil. You know, oil has been discovered in the Middle East and it needs to be kept divided. So you create all sorts of problems, you know. The West has actually done away with many of the secular countries. Iraq was a secular thing. Iran, moment, you know, they nationalized oil, it was, the democratic government was thrown out. And I wouldn't completely blame the West alone. There is a certain amount of, within the Muslim community itself, the elite, probably the Salafists and others, the House of South, they have a reason to, you know, rewrite kind of things. But I think we have reached an end. You know, there is a realization now happening that things can't be done this way. And we have a rich history, you know, rich history of rationalism and all that in the Islamic thing. I think things will change. That's how I see.
Next question.
Can you? Good evening, sir. Sir, it is an Irish proverb. People without the knowledge of their past, culture and heritage is like tree without roots. So, your comments, your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. Next question.
As historians, how can you all do something to improve the display and labeling in museums? Because most of the time you'll find just a whole bunch of statues, all of them saying Chola bronze, and that's about it. So, and except for Calcutta Museum, I found most of the museums, the labeling and display is just not
It's very sad. And if you look at the international museums, you find that Indian museums are so far thrown back in time that they are just stuck in some time warp. It's high time that something is done to make them more interactive. They move their displays so that, you know, you don't have the same displays when you go there 10 years later. Most museums abroad have this habit of changing the collection which is on display and keeping something in reserve. In the Madras Museum, for instance, I think it hadn't been done in 40 years or something, the changing of the display. And then recently they decided to put out everything on display so that nobody will say you haven't changed the display thereafter.
No, but good things are also happening. It's in the offing, and we hope we'll see a better museum very soon.
Yeah, I have a question here. Yeah, Anwar, this is a question to you. You said that you started looking at history because you want to discover your own background, and it's a kind of a discovery for you itself. You know. Now, where are you right now at this journey of yours? And do you feel that you have rediscovered or recreated or reconstructed? What is the way? Where are you standing at this point of time in your journey?
No, the thing is, that journey is fascinating. Has been fascinating, is fascinating because you realize so much. You know, I went to Malaysia Kadaram. Kadaram is a place Kadaram Kondan, Rajendra Chola invaded. And it was for me a kind of a pilgrimage, a journey that I need to make if I go to Malaysia. I went there, and then as I went around and looked at the temples that have been reconstructed and artifacts, other things, finally, what I get to see, when they talk about the ancientness of Kadaram, they say that it gets mentioned in the Sangam literature. It's like me going there and discovering something about Sangam literature. The ancientness of Kadaram is written as, Kalahatta Akam. That is how Sangam literature discovers, the iron ore that came from Kadaram. So these kind of fascinating discoveries I've been making, and I have been very clear, for me, one of the, I should actually thank Tariq Ali. Tariq Ali's book of Shadow of the Pomegranate Tree, that made me re-look at the Islamic heritage. I would say, Periyar actually had a better understanding. Ivera Periyar had a better understanding. And he actually said, something like, Inayilivu neenga Islami iniya marundu. Antidote to untouchability is Islam. Now, his own party fellow said, what's wrong with you? You expect us to convert to Islam. He said, no, don't look at these boys around here. Don't think wearing lungi and sporting a skull cap is what is Islam. Look at what is in Turkey. Look at what is in Egypt. Those are Islams. We can have our own Dravidian Islam. So I have also come to understanding that Islam is not a monotheistic thing. There have been different streams, different ways of looking at it and all that. So I'm happy with both my Tamil identity as well as Islamic identity. So I'm comfortable with it, and I feel that today things are at a stage that things will change.
Thank you so much. We've got the wrap signal. So see you all in the next LFL. Have a fantastic year. See you.
Thank you.